So guys, last night I got thinking it would be super cool to try and attempt to shoot an entire commercial using nothing but the iPhone 12 Pro. So, what do you think I did?
So, you're looking for beer, but this isn't just any beer. You got a can of Camden Hell's Lager. Nice choice. So quick, pour it, listen to it. That's the sound of a delicious beverage. And remember, please enjoy responsibly.
What is up, creators? Welcome back to another Budget Wednesday. This time it's on a Thursday, I think, in terms of when I'm actually going to post this. But if you're new on the channel, you know that actually Budget Wednesday not coming on a Wednesday is not totally new. But if you're new to the channel and you don't know, this is a show where we go through something to improve your videography, your photography, without costing you a bunch of money. Today we're talking about mobile content creation. I know that this is not a budget phone, but overall these same principles can be applied to shooting with any mobile phone. I just thought it would be a super interesting video to see what type of quality you can get out of the new iPhone 12 Pro, since its video capabilities are supposed to be fantastic. So as always, I thought it would be cool to take you a bit behind the scenes with me today, sort of talk about the gear and the production, talk about some of the shots that went into this video, and talk about the outcome and how happy I was in general. So kicking off the list here, I sort of went in with a vision that I wanted the opening shot to be a sort of revolving zoom around the beer can. And I actually pivoted that relatively quickly. And what I did was I turned off all my overhead lights, or even my main key light. I completely turned that off. And instead what I used is this little RGB light, this light right here. And this is just from a company called Viltrox, quite a bright light there. And basically what I did is I set this to a red. It goes to a nice sort of deep hue red. It's fully RGB customizable. And all I did was just pan over the can from different angles. Because the beer brand is called Hell's Lager, I thought the red really went well with the type of brand. And I actually thought that those opening shots, even though they were super simple, and you could pretty much get that shot with any camera, it was actually a really nice way to open the video. In terms of other gear on the production, I used a key light, the Godox SL60W. This is the key light that I use for all of my video production generally. I have two of these. I think they're a really good, inexpensive, but really powerful and consistent lighting source. I obviously use this backdrop that I'm using right now. This is a nice sort of dark vinyl backdrop. I prefer to use vinyl if I can get away with it rather than using paper, and that came in useful later in the video when I ended up overflowing the beer over the glass and onto the backdrop. And the nice thing about a vinyl backdrop is that they are fully wipeable, and if that was paper, that would have ruined that surface. I would have had to, you know, cut it or something like that. And then I obviously used the iPhone 12 Pro that is here, and in order to actually mount it on my tripod, now this seems fairly ridiculous, but I had to sort of come up with this weird absolute mental rig. So I have a tripod mount here, and for some reason this wouldn't sit properly on my Manfrotto mount. So I have this set up to a monitor mount and then mounted on a cage. Like, that is an utterly ridiculous setup to just get your phone on a tripod. There are much easier options, but hey, you know, sometimes you have to improvise and figure out what's going to work and just work with what you've got. So in terms of actual production, one of the first things that I always do on a phone if I'm going to shoot some, you know, slightly more cinematic video where I'm actually sort of taking control of the camera settings, is I work with Filmic Pro, which is an app that you can download. It's relatively expensive for an app, but still a relatively affordable filmmaking tool. And what that will let you do is change things really quickly and have a lot more control over your camera settings. So you can change things like your frame rates and your resolution very quickly within the app. You can also lock exposures and focus much easier than you can in the default app for iOS. I mentioned that I shot the entire ad on the iPhone 12 Pro, and I did ever so slightly cheat. And what I did is I downloaded one additional stock footage clip, and I downloaded that from Storybox. This is not a sponsored video. I just have a Storybox subscription because I think it's a great service. And that was the one with the bubbles, the close-up on the bubbles, because for sort of try as I might, I just could not get a close enough shot of the bubbles sort of looking like this. And I had an idea of what I wanted to do with this transition, where I had some bubbles sort of overlaying with the sound design, and I just couldn't achieve that look using the phone. But sometimes, again, you have to work with what you've got. I knew that I could get access to a little clip like that, and I knew that it would enhance the video. So in terms of camera settings and production on the phone, I didn't use the HDR video that I think the iPhone 12 Pro comes with. I just decided that it was going to make things more complicated. I wouldn't be able to get them, sort of make the most out of it, and I'm not even sure my computer would totally be able to handle it. So I just sort of stuck with the normal options on the iPhone. And most of this video was shot in 4K 60 frames a second, and the slow motion clips were actually shot in 1080 at 240 frames a second. And that is a massive advantage for this iPhone. Like, you can shoot in some very advanced frame rates for a little phone like this. Like my Canon EOS R, it doesn't even shoot 4K in 60 frames a second. So this iPhone actually beats that out by a long way. And I thought the 4K 60 frames a second footage looked absolutely fantastic. You can see in the 240 frames a second footage that the motion is great and the slow motion is great, but you are losing quite a lot of detail in terms of picture quality. Another thing I was surprised about is that this footage that actually came out of the phone was actually surprisingly easy to mess around with in my editor in Final Cut Pro. So here's some of these sort of clips and footage that we were filming, and you can see that the before and after to how it actually came out after I'd played around and sort of graded things, and things are looking quite different. And I'm not used to a phone you being able to play quite as much as you would, and I'm not totally sure whether that's something to do with the setting and the environment that I'm in, just allowing me to crush the blacks on the black backdrop, that type of thing. Normally though, I can't really grade iPhone footage, it just almost like falls apart straight away, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. Right, so I firmly believe that you can shoot one of these videos using pretty much any tool that you have at your disposal. My mantra is the best camera is the best camera you have on you. So if you have access to a great camera, sure, you could totally use that. But if you have only an iPhone, you could definitely use that too. And there are some important elements in this production that I think go past the camera. And those for me are the sound design and the voiceover. I used a service called Fiverr to achieve that voiceover. I just sort of contacted a seller, and he was like super good, super quick, and sent me that voiceover revision. It was really cheap. Again, not a sponsored video by Fiverr. And then the other thing is the sound design and the amount of sound effects that I used in the production of this advert. So what I'm going to do is, I think it would be interesting for you guys, is I'm going to roll the whole commercial, and I'm going to take out the music, and I'm going to take out the voiceover, just so you can see how many sound effects actually were put into this video. There we go, so you can clearly see that the sound design makes a massive difference in terms of the overall production. I'll do my best to link a couple of free sound resources in the description if you are interested. All right, so now we come to a point where I'm going to just basically give some recommendations and thoughts for if you are trying to achieve an advert or a commercial, or just, you know, a video production on your phone a bit like this. And the first tip that I would give you by far and away is a stabilizer, either a stabilizer or a tripod. Have some form of stabilizing your camera. I think there's a really nice shot here, the 240 frames a second slow motion. For that, what I did was just shot that entirely handheld. And the nice thing is that in 240 frames a second, you're not going to notice any wobble with your hands. But if you're shooting in 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second, you would probably start to see a bit of shake. So a tripod is a must-have for a production like this. Get creative with your angles angles and frame rates. As you can see, I used a mixture of different angles, a wide on the glass here, a slightly closer up version in 60 frames a second, slowed down, the sort of pouring shots where things are really slowed down at 240 frames a second. All of this go towards making it feel like a, you know, more of a production than just if I just used one shot. And then I would say my last tip is to just make it feel like an overall production. I think the voiceover is an important inclusion in a project like this, because what it does is it takes your focus totally away from just the visuals and sort of makes everything feel a bit more cohesive and a bit more professional. There we go, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video, maybe found it interesting or helpful. If you're interested in watching more Budget Wednesday videos, I will link the entire playlist down below in the description so you can check out any other content that we've done on producing content creation without breaking the bank. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.